Well, thank you all, first of all, for coming. I know this is the end of the day. If any of you want to just take a quick nap, that's fine with me. Just don't snore, though, please. So today we're going to be talking about black and white printing. Now, in 40 minutes that I have to try and give you, or 45 minutes, something that really is a lifetime of work. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm a Moab master. My studio is sponsored by Moab and by a couple of other organizations. So, and I'm a former National Geographic photographer back almost when they started back in the 1980s. So let's get into this. I'm going to be talking fairly quickly, but afterward I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have. These are just some, you probably have seen these before, so I'm not going to bother reading them. You know who did this, right? Who said these? Okay, you're about to find out. Ansel Adams. And it really is so true, because people think of Ansel Adams, they say, oh, you know, he would hate digital photography today and digital post-processing. I can't think anything that's further from the truth, because he spent sometimes 2 weeks, 8 to 12 hours a day, printing, reprinting, changing developer, changing times, et cetera, to get his prints correct. So I think he would probably be thrilled to be out of the wet darkroom and doing it on a computer. I'm going to try to run through as many of these as I possibly can in the time allotted about black and white. And the first thing I want to say is this. When I teach black and white photography, it's critical to understand that in order to succeed really at a high quality in black and white, you need to turn your cameras to monochrome. You can't be distracted by color. Black and white is also all about light and dark, about the contrast between light and dark. If you don't see it through your viewfinder in black and white, it will not allow you to really get all that you can from a black and white photograph. And I'll show you that as we go along. Content, black and white. You know, we live in a color world. We're subjected to over 100,000 color images a day in modern times. So we're used to that. So in order for people to grok what you're shooting in black and white, you need to have strong content. And we'll talk about what that content is. Things like the image has to have some drama to it, or patterns, texture, foreground elements are very important too. Something that I emphasize in black and white photography is that oftentimes minimalist type of images, or what I would call just simpler images, really do help to tell your story. So let's take a look at some. All of the images you're about to see is my photography. This was for a magazine where I had to show, this is taken in Yukon Territory in Canada, up near the Arctic Circle, to show how weather coming in from the Arctic Ocean can sometimes be very fierce. So drama is important. Context is also important. This taken in Antarctica. My intent was to have a shot for the highlights, have everything else in silhouette when this guy turns around suddenly, and I'm able to get a context there of what it is that you're actually looking at. Or this image taken in the Arctic, suddenly when some God's rays came down and illuminated the scene, it adds some drama to the scene. Even simple things like a hay bale, the black and white contrast can give you a good image. One of my favorite things is, you know, to shoot wood. I love the patterns that wood can take. But a funny thing happened with it, and that is I shot this and didn't realize until after the shot that over here on the left side, it's actually a scary face. So what I did was I enlarged it for that for my grandkids for Halloween. And they had this, and it was like 40 by 60 when they went into the room, so it was a hit. Contrast helps, as I mentioned. Foreground elements. This is in South Georgia Island in the Antarctic with an old decommissioned whaling vessel. You can see the gun in the front. But I wanted something to give some foreground interest. Same thing with this in Canada. This, I'm sure many of you have been there. This is Jökulsárlón Beach, what's called Diamond Beach in Iceland, during a hurricane, actually. So this is, again, some drama. Contrast is really critical. It's important to separate your tones, light from dark. So tonal separation is critical. Contrast also adds some dramatic impact to your images. But please use it judiciously. I'm going to show you how not to use it judiciously in just a moment. And where you should concentrate your contrast is really in post-processing, is in the local part of your post-processing. So take, for example, this shot taken in the Canadian Rockies, flat, just right out of camera, just very flat. Nothing is added to this, shot in RAW. Now, all I'm going to do in this is nothing else but drag that contrast slider to the right. Okay? Before, after. Contrast work adds a lot. This is overdone, but I just wanted to give you the idea that contrast makes a difference. In this case, shot in China, I wanted to emphasize the fog, but also the monastery. So in the Tiananmen Mountains, again, contrast is important. This also in the Tiananmen Mountains, contrast, separation of the darks from the lights. Contrast helps. Just a little bit. 5 points can make a huge difference. Waterfalls. What is the intent of waterfalls? And this is a big thing that I have with people who are learning about black and white is you don't have to get all the shadows to show. Allow some black to be in your image. In this case, photographing for the light will give you, in today's cameras, your dynamic range is adequate enough, 12, 13, 14, 15 stops, that you can retrieve some of the shadows, but you can't if you overexpose the light. You're going to get, if you get up to 155 or whatever, it gets bad. This is an image that was on, I unfortunately don't have that quite with me, I don't believe. It may be later in this presentation, but I shot this in color for a magazine, and it looks nice. There were blue sky, not a cloud there, but it wasn't until I shot it in black and white that I was able to really pull out all that I wanted from here. You can see the play of light in the image. This is the church in Vik, V-I-K, in Iceland at 10:30 at night. So, the sun is setting, everything is dark, but just that one church has the light on it. Now, the question I'm often asked is about toning your image. Do you want to tone your image? In other words, make it more sepia-like, for example. And this is a critical point, is that do it gently. Don't go overboard with toning, but here's the key thing. I've seen so many prints ruined because the toning ends at the edge of the actual image. When you tone, make sure to carry that toning all the way to the edge of the print, so you don't have a toned image and a white border around it. It's very distracting, if you will, especially if you intend to show your images in an exhibition or otherwise. This is an image of a Kalahari lion in South Africa, and I decided that I wanted to tone it. so I toned it a little bit. But this was an interesting thing that happened is I was driving in a reserve, and I turned the corner at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I turned the corner, and there was this lion sitting there just looking at me. I mean, he was enormous. It's the biggest lion I'd ever seen. So if you look up in his eye, you can see a reflection of my vehicle. And if you look at it enlarged, you can see that, and that little dot in the center is my lens. And that was shot with a 24-70 at 50 millimeters. So that line was only about 15 feet from me. And I spent 45 minutes watching him go down this trail and pee on all the bushes to set up his territory. But it was kind of fun. This at the Wailing Wall, again, showing some drama, but also contrast, separating the wall from the man who is obviously in prayer. Another thing to consider that works very well in black and white photography are high-key and low-key images. And they do work very well. This is a shot in the Serengeti. And again, I shot this to create a high-key look. This is just the opposite. This was shot, and it's an interesting, I think it's a lifelong lesson, certainly for me. This is in Great Sands National Park in Colorado. So when I got there, my wife was with me at the time. We had, there were 35 photographers there. She counted them. As soon as the storm started to arrive, and I was there specifically because I read that a storm was approaching, every single photographer vacated. Sometimes it pays to wait a little bit. I had something draped over my camera to keep the sand out, but I took it off quickly, took the shot, and kept on doing that for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then was able to capture the shot. So this is a lower key image, but by focusing on the light again, and just very little in terms of the shadows, and I wish it would look better on the screen, but of course, you all know that on this kind of screen, you don't get full realization of the image. Another low-key image with high-key accents on the side. This lighthouse image, same thing, low-key with high-key emphasis. Sometimes it's important to provide context, especially if you're working on a story. So a lot of my photography has been working with magazines, and in storytelling, it's hard to just, for example, photograph a waterfall without people understanding the magnitude of what they're looking at. So this is a case where I was in Iceland in November. It was freezing cold out. Nobody else was at this waterfall. I took pictures for a good half hour or more, and finally, 2 young women arrived in a beat-up old van, and they walked toward the waterfall. Some of you have probably been to that waterfall, but that would mean nothing. You could not have a sense of how vast this waterfall is if the person wasn't there, right? So by waiting for that, I was able to give some context to the magnificence of this waterfall. That was shot at about 1/3 of a second, and the person, fortunately, was standing there just awestruck by this wonderful waterfall, as I always am. All right, so question is, so suppose you get into black and white. Can it actually help your color photography? I'm here to tell you, yes, it can definitely help your color photography. For example, just go out and photograph one day and pick a color red, pick a color blue, and go out and just photograph things that are in that emphasize that color. It trains your eye to see to vision a scene in that, with those limitations, if you will. So I'll show you an example in a moment of shooting two complementary colors. That's always a good thing to train yourself with. And learn to simplify, even though you're shooting in color, which is a huge distraction. And I'm going to take a minute to tell you this story. Back in the late 70s, a psychology department, not a photographic department, but a psychology department in a major university, was curious about the effect of color prints and black and white prints on viewers. So they set up a gallery on campus, but they had people from the towns around visiting also. So they had several hundred people going through this gallery. And the gallery had black and white and color images that are very, very similar. They had cameras trained on the people's eyes, and their supposition was that people would, of course, spend more time on these full color images. What they found was that people spent 3 times as much time on the black and white images than they did on the color. So they needed to figure out why. And they found out 3 things about it. First thing is that people, when they face a black and white image, because we're so exposed to color every day, and even when we look around, when we look from here to here, it's 2 different, of course I can't see it because the light's in my eye, but basically you see 2 different color images. People need to do a psychological thing called decoding. You are not aware of it when it's totally unconscious. But you have to decode what you're looking at, because if you're looking at something that you would normally see in color, your brain has to make an adjustment. Then you enter the next part of it, where it's called involvement. Now that you've figured this out, it takes you another several seconds, and you feel a sense of involvement. You've decoded it unconsciously. Now comes the involvement. And finally, they said the 3rd phase was ownership. Now, I wish that it meant they would buy the print, but that doesn't mean it. It's psychologically, you feel a sense of, yeah, I get that. And those 3 factors, those 3 processes that you have to go through are part of the black and white milieu, if you will. So simplify. Here's an example of complementary colors in the water. Here's an example of a print I took in Banff in the Rockies. This is Vermilion Lake, and I got there intentionally just before sunrise. I do have that image on the print itself. You're not going to be able to see it, well, maybe you will. But this is on Moab Entrada paper, and can you see it? Pretty much, okay. You can always come up later and look at it. But again, even with a color image, you can be very subtle in the color and get an almost black and white type image. So in this case, I didn't care about everything being dark. I wanted that silhouetted, but I wanted this very muted palette. And again, I think black and white photography helps you to see that. Just some other examples, black and white images. 2 of the 3 are in China. 1 is in Tanzania. All right. Something critical that you should know for all your photography, black and white or color, is hands. There are 2 things that really have an emotional impact on people. One is eyes, because we look at each other, and eyes are very important in photography, as you well know. You can have an animal totally out of focus, but if the eyes are in focus, it's good. If you have the animal in focus, but the eyes are out of focus, the reaction of people is not going to be good. The second thing, though, is hands. We all crave touch. We all, from infancy, are hugged. I love to try to capture the hands of people because it helps to tell the story. Otherwise, even so, just a little bit of light sometimes makes the real difference in whether it be portraiture or not. The next thing that I learned, but I want to emphasize here with your black and white, is what's called the National Geographic effect, Nat Geo effect. And it involves several things. We talked about context, we talked about drama, having people in the scene for some stories is important, to get a sense of the environment, and where possible to have some action. So this man in Myanmar, fishing on this lake was just so acrobatic that I just felt compelled to take it. Here's an example. This is Machu Picchu. What? It's just, it's a wall, etc. Would that be something that I would submit to my editor? Probably not, because if I'm telling a story of Machu Picchu, I want to show this, right? So people, adding people to your environmental shots is sometimes part of the story. So don't feel like you have to have it be a pristine photo of just the nature. You can also have people in it to help tell your story. In this case, again, showing some action, people actually doing something. And just having a slightly slow shutter speed, a 15th of a second in this case, can really help to tell a story quite well. So in this case, this woman winnowing rice in Myanmar. Kids are kids. You know, you see their toys, so to speak, not these expensive Lego gifts or whatever, but still having fun nonetheless. So people are important. This is, again, in terms of contrast, I do have that here also on paper, in case, for those of you who are interested in what that would look like. But it really works well. Again, this is on an Entrada paper from Moab, which we're also sponsored by Awagami, by the way, a Japanese washi paper company, but it's an entirely different kind of printing. You have to really learn how to use that, because it doesn't respond like Western papers. Again, look for some action, something that tells a story if you're shooting in black and white. This I want to talk about for a moment. This bear, I followed for 12 years in Alaska. And during that time, she had a litter of 3, a litter of 2, and a litter of 3. She had another litter during that 12 years, but I didn't get to see that litter because I couldn't get there at the time. So many of us would be happy to have what I call Bear 101, Elephant 101. Like you'd see in a textbook, oh, I've got an elephant, I've got a picture of a grizzly bear. But what I needed to tell in this story that I was shooting was the relationship of the animal to the environment. And for 4 days on this particular visit, I was shooting her and some of her cubs and so on. And, but I wasn't getting the shot I wanted. And I had to be back to Whitehorse, Yukon, to get a flight out later that day. And I was 5 hours away from it. So this is the last morning that I could get a shot, and just happened that look at those claws, but look at the salmon just sacrificing itself so that this mother could survive and nurse her cubs all through the winter. Really, I thought finally I managed to get the shot of this bear that I wanted. I should also mention that 2 years ago, a hunter, unfortunately from New York, shot her, even though she was wearing a collar. So it was, people were really devastated that she was lost. She was really a wonderful sow. Anyway, she's gone now. That's how she goes. So now I remember the whole purpose of this is to talk about capture to presentation. And my assistant, Bob, is a master printer, so we are very into printing our black and white images. Color images too, but mostly black and white. So what we recommend is black and white prints really look good large because, again, of the drama, the context that you'll be using, et cetera, it really looks great large. So we recommend first always do a proof on letter size or A4 if you shoot on European stock or Asian stock paper. Either one, they're almost the same size. But first proof there before you print large, because if there are errors if things are out of focus, for example, or there's a wire in it and you have to correct it, it's better to know on an A4 paper than it is to shoot something on a 30 by 40 or 40 by 60. You don't want to learn there with the cost of inks nowadays and paper. You don't want to learn on the larger one. As I mentioned, there's certainly, so here's an image showing, why does it look so weird? Oh, I guess I'm on the side here. At any event, that is on 44-inch wide paper. So it's 44 by 44, but it's with the frame, it adds more to it. So it's 50 by 50. And that, you can see everything. You know, once it's large, it really adds something to the image. This shot is 40 by 60, and it's a silverback in Uganda, who, by the way, it was really neat. The baby ran up to him, and he was caressing this baby, and then he started to groom it. You know how they do that? They take off a tick, you know, like that. And he got some insect, I don't know what it was. He picked off the baby and then shooed the baby away. He put it in his hand, and for the next 10 minutes, every time it would go, he would stare at it, and if it would go off his hand, he would push it back. It was such a sentient moment. When you look at his nails, his fingers, his concentration, he's 500 pounds, by the way, you just realize that the relationships that we have with these primates. But anyway, large is good. All right, so let's talk about paper choice. And I have to say today the number of papers that are available are absolutely amazing. Moab, you've got Canson, Hahnemühle, you've got such great choices of papers today. It's almost hard just to know which ones to pick. We recommend that if you're just starting in printing, concentrate on 2 or 3 papers, that's it. A matte paper, a semi-gloss paper. We don't do glossy prints at all, but at least those 2, and get to know them really well. And get 1 or 2 images that you really like a lot, get it printed, make your mistakes, try it, experiment, and then make sure that you save, when you get it just the right way, save it in a matte image and a semi-gloss image. Then, once you know how you would like your prints to look, you can then try a different paper and see how it reacts to the same image. So you see what I'm saying with that. Texture does matter. If you go down to the Moab exhibit later or tomorrow, there's an image there, one of images that's printed large, but it's printed on texture paper. And you'll see, if you look at it close, how the texture affects the image. And I think you would enjoy that. Also, consider the Dmax of the paper. I want to go off the script here on this. Dmax refers to the ability of paper to represent blacks. That's important, because you want your blacks to look black on the paper, not like muddy. We call it muddiness, where it's not quite as black as it could be or should be. You can regulate that, but if a paper is not able to give you those blacks, even when using your black inks, then it doesn't do you much good. Or it's possible that you wouldn't get the results that you want. So that's where the Japanese washi papers come in, by the way. The washi papers are like a different universe. They're beautiful. They're beautifully made. The Japanese have been doing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. So we love origami washi papers. The word washi, by the way, you always see washi papers. Wa and shi means Japanese paper. Washi. So the point is that consider the Dmax of the paper when you're buying the paper. And most of the good manufacturers will tell you whether it's got a good high Dmax or not. So that's all. We just wanted to mention that. And the other final thing is experiment. Unfortunately, you need to have a budget set aside for that. Use A4 or a letter-sized paper. Print, print, print until you get really proficient at it. Take a workshop. Little plug, we teach fine art printing workshops 3 times a year, but they're very small. We only take 4 people. That's our limit. But there are others. Robert, who just talked here, he teaches fine art printing. He is fantastic. People love him, and he's located right around here, not too far. I'm in Maryland, so anyway, workshops really help because you can get feedback from people who are experienced at it. Okay, so now you got your prints, you've taken the picture, you post-processed it, you've got it printed on paper. What about framing the prints? All right. We've seen some funny things with this. I don't know why, but people sometimes they'll frame their black and white frames with very loud colored frames for whatever reason. Unless you do have a reason. We recently went to an exhibition, my assistant and I, and we saw black and white images purposely printed on weird fluorescent frames, but there was a reason for it. At any event, our opinion is, and I think most judges will tell you, that loud colored frames do clash. So, if you shoot in black and white, you don't want frames like this. Trust me, it just will not. For some reason, it doesn't work. Great artists. I love Dutch painters. Some of the Dutch painters, by the way, if you don't have to take a course in photography. If you want to learn about light in an image, you look at the Dutch painters. They mastered that, the effect of light on a scene. So what is the presentation? We feel that's part of the battle. To exhibit your work, the way you present it is very important. If you're doing an exhibition, whether you start local, for your local library, or it's in a gallery, you can't mix glossy prints with black and white because the human eye is trained to move toward high contrast, toward the glossy. So you're short-selling your matte images, matte paper images, to the glossy. They don't work side by side. If you're going to do that, then you should have it in a separate room or a separate area so people's eyes can adjust and they're not making comparisons between your matte prints and your glossy prints. Today, there are all sorts of mounting options. For one reason is because adhesives have improved. We have all sorts of incredibly good adhesives nowadays that can work with your prints. But, you know, we've seen metal prints. Well, of course, you know you can get aluminum prints made. But, I mean, you can put your print on some sort of scratched up, rusty, funky metal and get a real good result if it's an industrial type of photograph that you've taken. Okay, so now some odds and ends before I take questions. I mentioned this before. Washi papers have lower contrast, so you need to be careful about what kinds of images you put on your washi. If you're going to get into Japanese papers, then you should be aware of the fact that they do have less contrast and the Dmax tends to be a bit lower. But you also get a beautiful effect because a lot of the papers have embedded fibers in them, like Awagami's Unryu paper or other papers from Japanese manufacturers. So you gain in certain areas, but you will not have some of the contrast that you expect in Western papers. Again, like I said at the very first slide that I showed you, you really need to discipline yourself to shoot in black and white. It takes guts to say, I'm going to switch my camera to monochrome. Almost every modern camera has that ability. You can just switch it in your menu system to monochrome, and that way what you see is what you're photographing is in black and white. So you're looking at shadows, you're looking at light, you're looking at texture. That's a whole different ball game than it is in color. One thing, I know we're all guilty of it, I've done this myself, is that we get a color image, we don't quite like it, let me try to make it in black and white and see what happens. Typically, you're not going to get the results that you could have gotten if you had photographed it in black and white. Because when you train your eye to it, you can see where shadows develop, where the texture is in the image. And you can frame your image to suit what you're actually seeing. Black and white photography, yeah. You can see that. My father was a very well-recognized amateur photographer here in New York City. And when he passed away, the Museum of the City of New York asked my sister and I if we would donate his body of work, which we did. But he used to tell me, he shot only color. I remember the day that he was one of thousands of photographers who beta tested film for Kodak. It was no big deal. It's just, you know, they had a lot of photographers. They would send you a couple of rolls of film. He would try it out. But I remember the day when Kodachrome 64 came out. My dad was like the happiest guy you could, you know, he got another stop and a third from his color images and he loved it. But my dad used to say, he would take me to exhibitions in New York City and he would say, I would say, well, Dad, and then most of them were in black and white, Edward Weston's work, Dorothea Lange. I said, Dad, how come you don't shoot in black and white? He says, it's too hard, which I thought was always funny. Yeah. So, at any event, yeah, it's hard work. So, that's basically what I wanted to share with you today. You're welcome to, let me just see if I have, yeah. Bob and I have a Substack. It's free. We have 16,000 subscribers now to it, but it's totally focused on printing, mounting, and displaying. color and black and white. So anything related to printing, from printers to how to post-process correctly for printing, et cetera, et cetera. If you go to paperarts.substack.com, take a look at it. We have hundreds of articles in there. You can go back and check things from a couple of years ago. But it's really become a wonderful community. So if you're interested in printing and you're interested in black and white, because most of my photography nowadays is black and white, you can go to this Substack, this paperarts.substack.com. And also my website is mrpickerphoto.com. So feel free to email me, or if it's a very technical question, I'd give it over to Bob, because he's the master printer and he's a technician, so he knows his stuff. So that's about it. First, let me take some questions, because we do have time. We have about 10 minutes for questions. The question is my opinion of printing edge to edge on the paper or leaving a border around the image. It really depends upon what the context is, what you're going to exhibit. So there are some times when printing edge to edge makes sense, but we tend not to print edge to edge. We like to see the border, to see the paper, for example. Now, why do I say that? We use a lot of Japanese paper, a lot of origami paper. Those papers are so extraordinary. We're passionate about papers. So if they have embedded fibers, we choose images for that paper that are enhanced by that fiber. So we want a nice border around it to complement the image. And we choose our images very carefully before they go on that kind of paper. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I saw you. You had a few examples of your photographs that are in panoramic sort of format.
Yeah.
Do you find them ready-made, the papers, or do you have to go roll?
Do I find the papers ready-made? Oh, I see. Yeah, these are, we have 4 printers in our studio. So we have 2 17-inch wide printers, one 24-inch wide printer, and one 44-inch wide printer. The 24 and the 44 are mostly we use with rolls. So this would be an example of that, where it's on roll paper. All right. So that is what that is. But on the 17-inch printers, which we use quite a bit, because we can print that on 17 by 22 is a standard size in Western papers. But if you're using the metric equivalent of it, it's called, there's an A2. A2 is actually 16 5/8 by 25. So that gives you more room for your landscape images to work with. So we use both varieties of that paper. And, but for my landscapes, this particular shot is just one shot. That is not a panoramic image. But you have to understand that excuse me, because I'm having real allergy problems once I hit New York. And I'm a native New Yorker, so I can say that. The thing is, what was I going to mention? I shoot medium format. So I used to shoot Hasselblad, but now for the last 7 or 8 years, I shoot the Fuji GFX 100. So that's 100 megapixels using a pretty wide angle lens. So I was able to do that. But I do shoot panos. In fact, I teach a course in panoramic photography. But today, with the post-processing software we have, you can handhold a pano and get some pretty decent results. I can't do that because our panos are huge. I would show it to you. Well, if you come tomorrow to my thing about how to make a portfolio, that you'll see that we have panos. I have one pano in our studio that is 25 feet by 9.5 feet. So that's 45 images stitched together, 15 across, 3 rows. So that's 45. But most of the time I'm shooting smaller amounts, 3 across, maybe 5 across, sometimes 2 rows or 3 rows of 3 or 5 across. It depends upon the scene.
Big round of applause for Mr. Lester Picker, everybody.